The sky was the color of dried blood. Ash rained from above like dirty snow, swirling through the air as the crackle of flames echoed faintly in the distance. Trees stood like skeletal remains, their branches reaching up in silent agony, already half consumed by fire. Marie tightened her grip on her backpack strap, the other hand firmly holding the leash of her young golden retriever pup, Toby. He whimpered low, ears pinned back, eyes darting across the haze-covered trail. She knelt beside him, wiping soot from his snout. "It's okay, baby. We're gonna get out of this," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it anymore. What began as a quiet camping trip in the heart of Redwood Pines had turned into a nightmare. A sudden lightning strike ignited a fire so fierce, it swallowed acres within hours. She and Toby had been hiking off-trail when it all started. By the time they realized how close the flames were, the forest had already started closing in behind them. And yet, the fire was what frightened her most now. It was the silence, the unnatural stillness between the roaring gusts of wind. It was the shadows, longer than they should have been, even in the orange twilight of smoke. She had managed to find a narrow, forgotten fireline trail, one of those old access roads used by rangers. It should have led her out of the woods. Instead, it wound deeper and deeper into thick brush and gnarled trees. Her phone had no signal, her map app frozen at the same loading screen for hours. Her compass spun slowly in her hand, as though it couldn't decide which way was north. Toby stopped suddenly, high ears perked. Then came the growl, low, rumbling, primal. Marie followed his gaze and saw it. A figure. A man. No, not a man. Something wearing a man shape stood several yards down the trail, partially cloaked in smoke. Its limbs were too long, swaying slightly like reeds in wind. The head tilted unnaturally, as if curious. No face, just darkness where features should have been. She blinked. It was gone, but the burnt leaves where it had stood smoldered softly, forming the shape of a charred footprint. Panic clawed at her throat. She turned and ran, dragging Toby with her. The pup yelped in protest, but he didn't resist for long. Together, they fled to the twisted path, her lungs burning from both effort and smoke. She didn't stop until her knees buckled. A clearing, an old ranger station, or what remained of one. Its roof caved in, walls splintered by time and neglect. Weeds had overtaken the structure, but it was shelter. She slipped inside with Toby, collapsing against the moldy floorboards, heart hammering against her ribs. Night had fallen fast. The red hue outside deepened into pitch, lit only by the distant glow of embers and an occasional flicker of flame dancing far off in the woods. And then she heard it, not the crackling of fire, not the groan of old wood, but a voice, soft, male, just outside the shack. "Why'd you run?" She froze. Toby snarled, lips curled back, tail stiff. Marie reached for a rusted axe propped in the corner, more for comfort than actual protection. She inched toward the broken window and peeked out. Nothing. The clearing was empty, save for shadows dancing across the trees. She told herself it was exhaustion, hallucinations from smoke inhalation. But when she turned back, she saw something on the wall. Words, scrawled in soot as if drawn with ash-covered fingers. "Don't leave the forest. He waits in the fire." She didn't sleep. The night was alive with noises. The shuffle of feet on pine needles, low whispers that rose and fell like a breeze through the trees. Toby paced restlessly, whining toward the door. At some point, something brushed the window. Just a flick of motion, a whisper of touch. By morning, Maria had decided she couldn't stay here. Even if the fire hadn't reached this part yet, it would soon. She needed to find the creek she'd seen days ago. Water would be safety. A trail, maybe even help. She packed what little she had left. Half a bottle of water, a flare, an old flashlight with weak batteries, and set off again with Toby leading. The trail now felt different. Wrong. She kept passing the same trees. The one with a lightning-shaped scar in its bark, the moss-covered boulder shaped like a skull. She marked each one with chalk, but every 10 minutes, they'd reappear. A loop. She was walking in a loop. But how? She screamed into the woods. Is someone doing this? "Who's out there?" The forest answered with silence. Then, just as the wind picked up, she saw it again. The figure, closer this time, standing halfway between two trees, its arm extending toward her, unmoving like a gesture. She didn't move. Couldn't. The wind stopped, and a voice whispered in her ear, clear as if someone stood inches away. "You brought him with you." She ran again. Branches clawed at her clothes. Thorns tore at her legs. Toby barked furiously behind her, trying to keep up. They didn't stop until the air shifted again, cooler, fresher. Water, the sound of trickling water, reached her ears. They broke through the brush and found it. The creek, wide, winding, silver against the scorched earth. Relief surged through her. Toby leapt in immediately, drinking and splashing. Marie dropped to her knees, cupping handfuls of water to her cracked lips. She was alive. She'd found hope. Then she saw the reflection. Not hers, not Toby's. Standing behind her, in the water's mirror, was a tall, charred silhouette with glowing red eyes, smoke rising off its limbs like steam. She turned around, nothing, but when she looked back at the water, it was still there, smiling. That night, she made camp near the creek, but she didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she dreamed of fire, tall walls of flame, whispers in the smoke, a voice calling her name. Toby? Toby? She woke to find him gone. His leash lay slack by her hand. She screamed his name into the trees. No answer, only the growing roar of fire, not near, but approaching like a stampede of flame. She ran toward the sound, lungs heaving, legs trembling. The forest was glowing red again, not from fire, but from eyes, dozens of them, watching, waiting. She finally found Toby by an old stone well, whimpering, his fur wet, tail tucked, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring down into the well. Marie followed his gaze. From the depths, something moved, something crawling, not with hands, with limbs too thin, too many, like smoke made flesh. And it whispered, "You weren't supposed to leave.